Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. Now, if you didn't see our first two videos, what are you doing? Go back and check them out. We have been working on this Bally 8-ball pinball machine. And we did a video where we put it together, plugged it in, and the thing still worked after all these years. And we figured out that somebody had been working on it, and they had hacked up the power supply pretty bad. So we worked on that, and then fixed a connector that they had hacked on, which was working just fine, but now it's how it's supposed to be. And then we did a second video where we fixed up the playfield and got it all together. Now you may be looking and saying, well, wait a minute, the playfield is only half together. That's because we're beginning this third video right in the middle of filming the second video. Yes, we can multitask videos like that. So by the time we get the parts in for the playfield, we'll edit that into the second video, which you should have already seen. But we need to work on some more of these boards, so that's what we're going to do in this video. So again, this game is up and running. It's in test mode right now, where we were just working on all of the lights. It looks like all of the lamps are working too. So this thing is, you could sell it how it is once we put the playfield back together. Got some of the parts laying over here. But I don't want to sell it how it is. I want to get it where it's very reliable, right? So in the other video, we worked on this rectifier board and transformer assembly here. Got it all doing its thing. And the next thing that we usually work on whenever we work on these is we get up here to this solenoid board. But again, it's all working. And somebody has serviced it and replaced the capacitor like we always do. But just to be thorough, I'm going to take that out and work on it anyway. And I believe that's a stern, actually. Yeah, it's a stern. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But this is, whenever we work on them, we always work from the wall to the flippers. So the power comes in and it goes up to this transformer and this rectifier board. That was what we fixed on the first one because there was a harness hacked into it. And then if the thing was broken, the next thing we would work on is the solenoid board. It's still working, but I don't want to sell it without having touched the thing, right? So I'm going to take this solenoid board out and we'll work on that. It creates the 5 volts that runs the other board, so it sends it over to the MPU and the lamp board. And then we've also got a display that's not working here, so we've got to try to figure that out. But even though it's working, I'm going to pull it out. We're going to look at it, see if there's any more preventative stuff that we need to do to it, and then we'll put it back in, and then we'll move over here to the MPU and the lamp board. But let me grab a screwdriver and I'll pull that out and we'll put it on the bench and take a look at what's going on with it right now, even though it's working. So here's what it looks like out of the game. A couple things are jumping out at me. I'll just show you some of the stuff that we always do to them. If you've watched us work on these before, you've seen us do this 20 times probably, but we do it on every machine. And since we're telling the tale of this 8-ball, we're going to do it on this one, right? Somebody has been before me though, so you might say, well, if you could tell by looking at the cap that somebody had worked on it, and we have seen where people have worked on the other stuff in the game, obviously somebody has worked through it. So somebody had worked on the rectifier board, added a different connector to it to replace the one that had burned up. Somebody has removed the battery off the MPU and added a remote battery holder. It looks like they've cleaned up some of the damage. We'll see that here in a little bit. Somebody has clear coated the playfield over a little bit of dirt, but it looks pretty good. Obviously somebody has been through this thing before, right? Well, I think it was like 20 years ago or something. And there may be some things that they did that it's not kind of how I like to do it, right? So since I'm selling this to somebody, I want to know if they call me on the phone and say, hey, it's broke, that I can tell them, hey, well, I know it might be this, it's not this, blah, 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 right? So for instance, if they call me on the phone and say, hey, the displays don't work, then I know that the right fuse is in there and that the fuse holder's in there, right? Because I didn't leave it like that. So, what are they doing to me here? So that ain't right. Why would they do that? Let's see what kind of fuse it is. I don't know if I can read it. Where are you? It is a 1 amp. That ain't right either. It's not the end of the world, but, you know, so that's not the right damn fuse, people. Now, this holder might break when I try to bend it back how it's supposed to be. I think we're all right. I think we're all right. I have to look up what the value of that is supposed to be. I think it's like a 1/4 amp or something like that. So I'll have to see if I've got that. The capacitor, oh hell. Are y'all ready for the evidence? By the way, when I say evidence, I'm doing that on purpose. I'm mimicking Sheriff Buford T. Justice. If you don't know, now you know. Put the evidence in the car. Look what that says. Sprague. Now, I had somebody tell me on a previous video that if it says Sprague, leave it alone because those are really good capacitors. Plus, it's a 105-degree one, which means it's a little better than most anyways. But look what it says there, 9414L. That means the 14th week of 1994. So whenever this game was worked through, was probably within a year or two of that, unless they're using really old caps. We might be able to tell by the batteries whenever we pull those out here in a minute. So in 1994, that cap was made, and now it's on the board. So I'm going to guess that this thing was redone by somebody in the late 90s at some point. And I was kind of leaning that way anyway. If I needed to guess when this thing was worked on, I would have said late 90s. In the late 90s, there was kind of like a resurgence of people wanting arcade games in their home game rooms. So for a little while there, unfortunately, before I got into it, but 97, 98, 99, something like that, you could sell stuff for a fortune. So somebody might have got a ton of money out of this thing back then. Or it may just be that they were working on one for somebody, but I think it was done in 95 or 96. If I had to bet money on it, that's what I would bet. Wonder if anything else will tell me I'm wrong. So the date code on this one is 7826, so 1978. That's going to be the original transistor there. The date code on this one is 7836. That will also be the original, so it's the 36th week of 1978. And this one was the 26th week of 1978. So, you know, this board was made in October, or is the revision that was made in October of 78, so they probably would have made it in late 78, early 79. And let's see if there's one on this display cap here. It says 7836, 36th week of 1978, same as the bottle cap transistor there. Okay, so that's all. I don't think that cap needs to be replaced, but usually whenever we do this, we replace this cap. What this cap does is it's the filter cap for the voltage regulator. So this is the 5-volt voltage regulator. It gets 12 volts in from the rectifier board, unregulated, and then it turns it into 5 volts. That's all working right now, and again, these don't really wear out. They either work or they don't work, so eventually it will die and stop working. But if I put a brand new one in there, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to last longer than that old one. So I'm just going to leave it alone. All of the coils are working. You may have seen on the first video, we actually played the thing. So all the coils are working, which means all of these coil transistors are fine. With the exception of the knocker. I don't think the knocker was working. So maybe we'll look into that. They probably just have it unhooked. But there are a couple little mods that we do too whenever we do it. So one of the things that, well, no, it was labeled on the back. On the back you see this repair here that someone has done. I have a lighting issue back here. Basically, they are replacing the trace there that has burned up. Yeah, that'll work. See how the trace is burnt right off the board? Now what that's doing is, this is the flipper relay. So basically they can use this relay to turn off or turn on the flippers. And that has smoked at some point. but was repaired. And, you know, putting a big old wire on it like that's a pretty good repair, and we're just going to leave it alone. One of the other things that we like to do is we tie test point 1 right here. Well, I better watch how I say that. Make sure I don't... This board's a little different than the other ones. We may not do that on this one. Usually we tie 2 of the test points together because what it does is this creates 5 volts and then it sends it out of this connector to the other boards. But one thing that it does is it sends it out and then back on the connector through a little jumper wire so that it runs these chips too, because these chips need 5 volts. And so if you tie these 2, I think it's test point 3, but I can't remember off the top of my head the actual number. On the Bally, it's easy to tell, but this one they're in a little different position. So we usually tie that together. It just makes it where you don't get resistance when that little loop happens, so that these chips don't have resistance, so it doesn't make any coils like one. It's not the end of the world if you don't even do the updates. But and then the other thing that we want to do is these connectors around the edge of the board. When you pull the connector off, it stresses the pins, and they bend a little bit. And after you do that 20 times, they crack a little bit. And so you end up getting what's called a cold solder joint, which can be, as I understand it now, we have a lot of people watch our channel that know a lot more about electronics than me. But as I understand it, a cold solder joint can be either a physical break, or it can be where, now tell me if I'm wrong, but the solder is not one chemical. It's several materials mixed together. And those can actually separate in the mixture of the solder, I believe, which would imply that they moved. So I don't know, I might be wrong about that. But I think you can actually have a solder joint that is literally cold. It doesn't conduct electricity, and you resolder it, and it kind of reflows, remixes the composition of the solder and gets it to work better. I could be wrong about that. But the ones that I always see are actual physical breaks, right? So I'm looking at one right now, as are you, which you already noticed if you know about this stuff. Do you see that last pin? See how there is a circle around the actual so there's a circle around the actual pin. Now look real close at the second one. There's one on it too, it's just not as bad. You see it? So I'm saying that's the first one, that's the second one. You can see how that's broken loose. So this needs new solder. And it'll do it at each end. I don't know if this end's like that. It is. See how it's broken loose? You don't even need to look for it. You just need to reflow them all. You need to do it with all of them. So I'm going to put new solder on all of those. All of those. All of those. All of those. And all of those. Now, on these little ones, the spacing on these is 0.156 inch. The spacing on these is 0.100 inch, which just means they're closer together, which means that it's easier to, when you resolder it, to make it connect to the one next to it accidentally. See the last one there? Same thing, bad solder joint. Now it may work like that. Ours is working. Or it may make stuff sporadically not work. And the issue that you run into is sometimes if you lose like a ground on the board or something, or the ground running to a chip, or the ground running out of wire to something else, it makes whatever that is lock on, like a coil stay on, or it might even make a sound stay on or something like that. I don't know about a sound on these, but the sounds are actually controlled by the solenoids. But it can make, on certain things, depending on, I don't think if it loses a ground on this it'll do that, but it might if it loses a ground on one of these or something, whatever. it can make things lock on. You have a problem with that on the Williams games especially. If the Williams games start getting bad solder, when the game comes up, sometimes the coil will lock on. That's not good. You don't want that. So I'm going to reflow all of these. I'm going to replace that fuse with the proper one. And then I think we're good to go. There's not too much to do to it. And then we'll move on to the MPU. But I'm going to do what I'm talking about on this one, and then we're going to put it back in and make sure that the game still boots up. Then we'll move over to the MPU. Okay, folks, so the game, I put the solenoid board back in, the game booted right back up, everything's cool, but we got to work on this MPU. So, as you probably well know, they originally had a battery soldered right here, and the thing starts leaking alkaline over the years and starts eating the board up. Well, this one's still working because somebody has already serviced it. So somebody has cleaned it up and put a little jumper wire along the bottom to replace the 8-up trace, and then has replaced a bunch of these components here. And has it up and running. They've also put new connectors on it. These ones with the locking strip are not original. But they didn't get it all the way cleaned up. So either the damage has returned, right, or they didn't clean it all the way up the first time. Sometimes you can tell by looking at the pins. So I don't see any corrosion on their new pins, but the battery holder that they put on, the batteries are all corroded. All right. But there's no corrosion where the batteries connect. So if I was going to guess, I'd say that this is just corrosion that they didn't get all the way cleaned up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it up a little bit again, put a little vinegar on it to neutralize it, rinse the vinegar off, and then put it back in the game. I'm going to clean the chips too. I'm going to take each one out of the socket and clean the legs and then put it back. Somebody sent me a while back this little fiberglass brush. So I'm going to use that on some of the corrosion, see how well that works. Your problem is sometimes whenever you do this, you like break stuff that's still working. But if it's corroded, it needs taken care of. So I'll see how bad it is and see if I can clean it up a little bit, and then I'll let you know what I figure out. So I'm cleaning it up. The batteries are all leaking and everything. Look at this. They're Radio Shack Inner Cell Plus batteries. Alkaline. Right? And they have no date on them. Now, as I remember, you know, they didn't have dates until kind of the late 90s, as best I can remember. That, you know, the batteries never had dates on them. And look what I found. Boom, boom, boom. This is from worldradiohistory.com. It's a scan of a old Radio Shack catalog. Inner Cell and Inner Cell Plus alkaline batteries. And if you're wondering about the time, packed with power. They are ideal for high current drain devices such as digital cameras, portable TVs, music keyboards, CD players, PDAs and organizers, boom boxes, handheld games, pagers, and flashlights. So, I don't know, folks. I'm still sticking with late 90s. I think that's when this thing was messed with, and they didn't change the batteries since then. But the game's still working, so really, what can you say? All right, so I'm cleaning it up, which basically is I'm just scratching off any corrosion I see anywhere. And the only thing that looked a little suspect was this, the 5101 socket down here. So I'm going to neutralize all this with vinegar and then rinse that off. And then I like to use alcohol to like make the water evaporate as well. And then once I do that, I'll put a socket back in and put the 5101 back in. I'm going to cut off these wires and put a new battery holder on it. But I've got a NVRAM chip coming too that fits in the socket, but I don't have it yet, so I'll rig up a little battery holder for now. On these, the NVRAM is really easy to do. You just take this 5101 chip out of its socket and replace it with the NVRAM. You can get those on eBay. They're like 20 bucks. And then no more batteries. But if you don't neutralize all this crap, it'll just happen again, like this one did. They left in the 2 leads of the battery. I think that might have been what caused all the damage. I think this obviously is damaged, but I don't think it came up to the board. I think it was these 2 pieces that they left in ate it up, but I took them out. Okay, so I'm going to keep cleaning on it, and we'll see what we get. Okay, folks, we got it mounted right back in there. I had another battery holder exactly like the other one. All right. So let's see what we got. Hopefully it's not even worse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what we want. That worked out pretty cool. Alright, so we've been having this issue though where one of the displays has never worked. So that's next on our list, okay? I'm going to put it in test. So that's the light test. A little bit too bright. The brightness thing, depending on if it's day or night, of course it's a different brightness in here, but also if I'm in the front room or the back room, it's a different brightness. Okay, so it looks like yeah, all of our bulbs are still working. So what we'll do with this lamp driver board, everything's working. I'll just take it out and I'll reflow the connectors on each side for cold solder joints, like we did on the MPU and the solenoid driver board. But yeah, let's go into the display test. Okay, so we've got 2 problems. This display is completely dead. This one the second digit is missing. And now I believe you don't even need the second digit on that, but we'll fix it anyway just for giggles. But the first thing I'm going to do is pull this one out and let's go look at it on the bench since it's not doing anything. Here is that display. Now, if you look really close at it, the only hope you have if one of these is completely dead like this is that it's bad solder or a bad connection on the power. So the power comes in on one of these pins and the ground comes in on one of these pins, but someone has already resoldered them, so they're all making good contact. But then it comes up here and connects to the actual glass. And some of that looks a little iffy, but it looks like everything is actually connected pretty good. But if you look very carefully, so look where the metal pins go into the glass. See how it looks there on that side? Now look over here. See how they've all been resoldered to the glass? And then if you look very carefully, right there, you see how the glass kind of sparkles? It has a chip on it. See it? It's chipped, so I think it may have leaked out the gas. Somebody hit it and see how it wobbles a little bit. Also, you see how the foam wraps around the bottom of it and that plastic piece sits flush on the board? Well, on this side, the foam is under the plastic piece and it does not sit flush to the board. That's because somebody has replaced. It looks like what happened was all of the pins broke off the damn glass and then they carefully soldered them all back. They may have had it working at some point, but alas, that is no more. So I don't think we're going to be able to save it. We're going to try, but I'm not so sure. So I checked all of these transistors and there's nothing wrong with any of them. For every digit to be out, it's usually like, the power supply. But, obviously our power supply in the game is working fine because the other displays are on. But power supply to this board. So It could be a connection here, or could be a connection on the glass. Small chance that this chip has went bad and made it where it can't display any segments, but that's not usual. It could be the diode, but this diode's fine. So I'm going to try reflowing the solder on this whole connector and reflowing the solder on all the pins on the glass, but I don't think that's going to fix it. So we're probably going to have to put another glass in it. I think that chip on the front did us in, but we'll see. Okay, as expected, that one still doesn't work, so I think the glass is bad on it. Now this is the one that the tens digit wasn't working. And so they get a signal, and then it runs through a resistor on its way to the glass. This light never works right. So if you see carefully, someone has replaced one of the resistors at R1, and resistor R3 has broken in half, but is still mounted on the board. Okay. So there's R1, R3, R5, and then if you look over here, there's R7, R9, and R11. So let me grab a new one of those. Okay, so they are 100K ohms resistance, 100K, not to be confused with 100 ohms or 1,000 ohms. They are 100,000 ohms. 100,000 ohms, 100K. And these burn up a lot. It's common to find these like way out of spec. They'll either be like, if you test them in circuit, they'll either be like 75 ohms or 150,000 ohms, 75,000 ohms or 150,000 ohms, somewhere in between there. Usually you're all right, but you probably want to replace them with one that's a little bigger. These original ones are like just regular quarter amp ones, so you want to go up to half an amp or even a full amp if you want to just splurge. So I'll replace that one and check the other ones, and then same thing. Normally you would resolder the edge connector, but it's already been done, probably in 1996. So I'll get the resistor on it, and then we'll try it out again. All right, so I took that one and put it up here because we need a good player score display more than we need a good ball and credit display. But the other one's completely dead, so I'm gonna have to try to pull one out of my stash and see if I can find one presentable enough that we can use in a machine. I've got a bunch of extra ones, but they're all burnt. They have places on the glass that are burnt up, so I'll have to see if I've got one that's decent. They don't have to be perfect. Most people won't even notice it. Like, let me prove that to you. Did you notice that one's burnt? See in the top in the middle there? Yeah, they've all got little things. So what I'll probably do is find one that's not quite as that's not so burnt that it can't be used, and I'll put it down here as the fourth player because nobody ever plays the fourth player, and then we'll take that one and put it in thing. But these three we haven't messed with yet, so I've got to take them out, and I'm going to check to make sure that they've been resoldered and check the resistors to make sure that they're not burnt up or burning up way out of spec. And that'll be that. So let me see what I can find for a fifth display. Alright folks, we're hunting another display. I ordered some displays off a guy a while back. These are all used. A bunch of them aren't all that great. That one's pretty heavily burnt, but it could be used. Worst case scenario. But let's look for best case scenario. What do you think about that? I also have another box of these that has like 100 of them in it, but I've been through it so many times I don't think any of them in there are all that great. Ugh. Hopefully I got something a little better than that. Hopefully. this sexy beast here. We may have already... That one might be messed up or something. I put it back in there. You'd think I would have marked it. You know what? This is going to be the one. See, it is burnt, but it's not life-threatening. That's another decent one. It's burnt on the last two, but it's not crazy. Same there. So these are all very usable. It's just, are you okay with it? Now, there are competing thoughts on this. This one here is pretty good, actually. There are competing thoughts on this. Some people say, hey, because here's the deal. So you end up with all of these displays that the last two digits are burnt, because in the attract mode, it lights up the last two digits all the time. So if the reason that they burn, one, they just kind of do it, but two, on a Bally, if the parts fell into the display power supply, they fell in such a way that it makes the voltage rise. So these get like 230 or 240 volts going to them, so it's overrated, or it's over voltage. So you want it to be down at like 190, or some people even run them lower than that. There's a little adjustment on the solenoid board. We'll check that in a little bit. But if you run these at any prolonged amount of time at 230, 240 volts, it burns up the displays, like these have all done. So you end up with a bunch of them that the last two digits are burned because they were in a machine that burnt. So you can either put brand new displays in it, which is fine, we've done that on other ones, or if you've got a machine like we've got that's got 4 good displays on it and needs one other display, well, you know, it would cost a couple $100. I guess you can just replace the one display, but cost $50 or $60 at least to replace one display with an LED one, or you can just use one of these burnt ones and one of the displays won't be perfect. So some people put it in the ball and play display, thinking that's the one different one, so if that one looks a little different and it's burnt a little bit, and what isn't that big of a deal. But what I like to do is I put it as the 4th player display, because nobody ever plays a 4-player game. It's honestly, it's like 1 or 2% of every game played on it is a 4-player game. There's never 4 people around that want to play at the same time. So you'll do it a few times just to point out that it can play 4 players, but nobody ever actually uses it. So if that display doesn't have a perfect crystal clear plasma display of the score, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to take one of these that's burnt a little bit and put it in there, and that'll save us $50 or so from buying a new LED display. All right, so I moved the one that was in the 4th player back up to the match, and then the 4th player is now this one that is burnt a little bit out of the box, but as you can see, it's fairly minimal. Definitely passable. Okay, so I've still got 3 of them that I have to reflow oh, wait a minute, I hadn't reflowed that one yet. I've got 3 of them that I have to reflow the solder on, so I'll pull them out one at a time and get them all ready, and then we're going to pull out the lamp board and reflow the solder on it too. Alright folks, we finished up with the displays, they all look good, and so now we're on the lamp board. Now remember, in this game all the lamps are working, so why am I messing with this? I'm just trying to do a little preventative maintenance. So really the only thing to do on the lamp board is just reflow all the connectors, because they're going to have the same problems with cold solder joints, especially on the corners of your connectors. I don't necessarily see any on this one, but we'll reflow it just to make sure. Another thing too is if you do get if you do get a light that doesn't work, and you can check the SCRs next to the one next to it. They're all the same and they'll all test the same in circuit. Now if you get one where you've got a light screwed up, if you look very carefully on the schematics, some of these are not used. This is just a generic board that they put in everything. So some of these on this particular game, or any particular game, they didn't use all of them. So there'll be a couple on here that you can find on the schematics that are not used on that game, and you can literally take them out and replace a bad one with it. But they're all cheap anyway if you go to replace them. what I do is every once in a while we get some of these that have battery damage on them, because the board with the battery's mounted about right here, right above this board. So it will drip down alkaline and screw up this board too if it's left sitting for a long time. This one here doesn't have that issue, but sometimes you get one that has that issue, and if it does, just save it, and a lot of the transistors will have no alkaline, SCRs will have no alkaline problems. You can take them off and have spare parts for your good working ones. But if you've only got 1 or 2 machines in your collection, you can just buy maybe 10 of these and it'll last you a lifetime. 10 SCR. And then also they make complete reproductions of these boards. So you can buy this board brand new for, I think, about $100, something like that. So, yeah. You can also buy them, used ones, really cheap, because there's just tons of them around. Since they usually don't have major problems, there's tons of these available. So I'll resolder the 4 connectors and we'll pop it back in, and we're going to see if all the displays still work. We're going to see if all of the lamps still work, and if so, we're about done with all the electronic stuff. Just a few things left. Okay, we put the lamp board back in. All the lamps are working that are computer controlled. Everything is still cooled. Wait a minute, there's 2 there. I might have to look into that. The bank shot value ones. That might just be light bulbs or something, but maybe, I'll bet I didn't put the light bulbs back in. I remember messing with those. I'll bet I never put the bulbs back in. But we got to look at those. But I want to show you something on the displays. Okay. So I hooked up my meter, and the displays are running at 174 volts right now. So let's go to that part, the display test. So at 174 volts, this is how they look. They look great. They look perfectly fine. I'm going to turn them up to like 200. They're supposed to be at 190. I'm going to turn them up just a little bit, just so you can see what they look like at different voltages. Okay, the highest I'm getting is 193, which is good. So at 193, they look exactly the same to me. So now I'm going to turn them way down to like, whatever we can get. It's 154. They look a little dimmer, I think. I think they're a little dimmer. But they still work fine. They still look good. That's like way under what they're supposed to be, though, so I'm going to turn them back up to like 170 and leave them. Okay. Yeah. So we're not going to run them at 190, what they're supposed to be. We're not letting them run at 250, which they'll do if the components short out up there in the top. 170 ought to be good. Okay, so let me look at those 2. Let me look at those 2 light bulbs. Okay, I fixed both of them by the old twist the bulb in the socket trick. All right, so that's about it. I'm going to swap the bulbs in the back box too, just so that they're all new. I'm going to clean off the front of the displays with the power off so that I don't feel that 170 volts that's running through them. And then we're going to put the back glass back on it. Joe has been doing some cosmetic stuff. Like he painted the frame around it, and he touched up fawns on the side here a little bit. Hey, give us a thumbs up for filming it for you. But I'll come back here in a minute whenever we get it all back together. It'll be our final thing that we shoot before we actually start playing it. We'll do another video of us playing it. But give me a second, and like a trick of magic, like a Houdini special, all of this will be together. Okay, folks, so we put everything back in it. Got our displays looking great. Look at them. Put the back glass back in. It looks fantastic. Look at that damn thing. We'll do another video of us playing it, but Matt is here, and he's going to test play it.
All right.
Matt, are you ready to test play it?
Sure.
Now, I should mention the flippers. I rebuilt the flippers. Now, the way I always do them is I always put mine a little higher than most people. So mine are at about, that would be 3 o'clock. Mine are at about maybe 4 o'clock or a little bit higher. A lot of people put them limp. They're like this. And if you do that, when the ball comes off here, it rolls, it changes the trajectory of the ball, but you can make wider shots. So you got to get it, you can't do them too high this way, or you'll never be able to make this shot or that shot. It's kind of tricky anyway, right? But I just don't like having them hanging. But if you hate that, if you definitely want yours limp.
Flaccid, yeah.
Flaccid. If you definitely want your flippers flaccid, go ahead and do it. It's just 2 little nuts that you screw. Or screws that you, what are they? Set screws. Set screws that you turn, and it makes them impotent, where they are no longer quite as erect as these are. Okay, so you can do that with yours if you want, but I'm not doing it. All right, Matt, go ahead.
All right. Let's see. Guess we could do 2-player.
How the hell am I going to do 2-player if I'm holding the camera, Matt? Come on.
Yep.
Look, I made him where there's a smaller spot between the middle, and it still went right through the middle. Look how smooth that is. Look at that. Wow. Holy moly. Perfect spinner shot.
Trying to get that 6.
Oh, right through the middle.
So I'm trying to get number 6 right now, I guess.
Yep. Or 5 or 7.
Well, I'm aiming for 6. The others will just happen on their own.
Yep, you missed. You missed again. Hey, you missed. Don't miss it. Hey, you missed. Oh, man. Tough luck, Matt. You want your quarterback?
Yeah, 61. That's like the highest one, right?
That's true. 61,000 is the new record on this machine. That's a fake number there. The 202,000, that was in the settings.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Nobody actually scored that.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, 61,780. That's pretty good. That might be a new world record. I'd have to check.
I mean, it probably is. That extra digit, they wouldn't have put it there.
That's just for testing purposes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so that they can... See, they can use these displays in any pinball machine. Yep. So on this one, nobody ever really gets up to 100,000.
No, that'd be silly.
Exactly. So these are just left over from the other games that they were making. All right, folks. So it looks like everything's working pretty good. So we're going to film another video where we actually play it.
Well.
And go over the instructions and everything. Yeah, Matt doesn't count. We'll go over the instructions and everything. We'll put the glass on it and play it with the glass on, which is a lot better. Have you noticed that? They play better with the glass on.
Yeah, they sound better too.
It's something with the sound. Whenever the glass is off, it sounds like crap's breaking the whole time, and it's not fun to play at all. So
it's just Fonzie keeps staring at me.
Oh yeah. Hey. Hey. I should put in some of the sound effects and stuff. I've got a bunch of sound effects of him talking and stuff I could put in.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I might do that. And did you watch Happy Days enough?
A little bit, not too much.
Do you know who that is?
Well, it looks like Ginger from Gilligan's Island, actually.
That's not Ginger from Gilligan's Island.
Okay.
It does look like her a little bit, though, now that you mention it. That's Pinky.
Okay.
I think her name's Pinky Tuscadero.
I remember the name.
She was basically the Fonz, but the female version. And the Fonz was really into her. You know, everybody was into the Fonz, and he didn't really care.
Right.
It was she was the one that the Fonz really got to the Fonz.
And then
that's how I remember it, at least. I might be wrong about that.
And then that's when he jumped over a shark on
exactly. She was right there. I think she might have done it too, or some crap. I can't remember. I only watched that once, and then I quit out of disgust. But, oh look, somebody's over here playing a pinball machine. And look at this, people. See the art on the side? Kind of like a Bally Fireball. I think they were promoting their own stuff there. All right, so we'll do another video where we actually go over the whole thing and play it and everything and look at the rules and all that stuff. But leave your comments below. Give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you while we work through fixing it. And thank you to everybody that's been using our Amazon links. We really appreciate that. Even Matt. Thank you, Matt, for using our Amazon links.
You're welcome.
So if you don't know about that, if you click the Amazon link below, there's different ones for different countries. It takes you to Amazon, and if you're going to buy something there, if you click the link first, it gives us a little piece of it. So thank you to everybody that's been doing that. Oh, and by the way, that's not really the Fonz or Pinky, because that would be licensed.
Yes,
this is just a ripoff.
I assumed so.
Yeah. So they had to make them a little bit different. So maybe they made her look like Ginger on purpose. So.
Yeah, and they made his coat brown instead of black, because gotta be.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, he's a little bit different. He kind of looks like a cross between James Dean and Fonzie.
Yeah, he probably was supposed to be James Dean, actually. Now
Yeah. Hey. Nah, look, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I guess it is supposed to be Happy Days.
It's straight up Happy Days now. Check this out. What in the hell's going on there? All right, so leave your comments below and make sure to check out our brother channel, my brother Donnie. He's literally my brother Donnie, and it has nothing to do with arcade games or pinball machines, but he's always doing something interesting. I'm over there with him a lot. This week's episode was about him climbing up on the roof of a building because he's trying to measure it to see how many shingles it takes. I was trying to explain to him that we can measure from the ground, but by the time I said that, he was already up the ladder. And he's walking across the roof like this.
Try it.
Yeah, he's trying to make sure it doesn't fall off. It's hilarious. Anyway, so go check that out. It's called My Brother Donnie. It's a hoot. And we will see you on the next video. We're going to do one more on this 8-ball, playing it and having fun with it. We'll see you then.